Welcome to the next level.
Hey everyone, this is 8-Bit Flashback, and a couple weeks ago I picked up one of these Sega Genesis Flashback Consoles, and I was going to do a review on it right away, but I decided to wait, so I gave it a lot of playing time and testing time. And I'll let you know how that went here in a few, but first we're going to open this up, check out the packaging, then we're going to take that Genesis apart and check out the inside of that. Alright, let's check this thing out. So when the Genesis Flashback Console was announced, a lot of people thought it was going to be a miniature console, a lot like the Super Nintendo Classic Edition. But as more information came out, we found out that wasn't true, and that it was actually a full-size console. So even though this is a full-size console, it is slightly smaller than the Sega Genesis Model 1. And the main difference in size is from the front to the back. It's about 2 to 3% smaller, so it's still very close to the original size. So the box is pretty nice looking, but it definitely looks like it's influenced by the Nintendo Classic Editions. And another thing I should point out is this console is made by AT Games, not Sega. So inside the box we got a poster, and we'll get back to that in a minute. We got the Genesis console itself. We got HDMI cable, 2 controllers that are wireless, and the AC adapter. The console itself looks great. It looks a lot like the Sega Genesis Model Number 1, but there is some differences. It doesn't have the volume button, it doesn't have the headphone jack, and the Sega logo is in a different spot. And even though this console looks great, it feels very cheap and lightweight when you're holding it. It feels like an empty case. It's hard to believe there's anything inside of it. But I do like the fact that you can play original Sega Genesis games. I would like to be able to test out a 32X and a Game Genie, but I'm pretty sure the 32X will not work, and the Game Genie is a maybe. And just for fun, here's a quick comparison of my Sega Genesis Classic Edition I made using a Sega Genesis USB hub with the Raspberry Pi Zero inside of it. And as you can see here, the detail on the smaller console is a little bit more accurate to the original Model 1. Alright, let's go ahead and take this apart and see what's going on the inside.
So there's 7 screws to remove, and one of them is located underneath that white label. So I had to pop a hole through that label to get that screw out. So there's not much going on inside here. There's a lot of extra space. You got your power buttons, controller ports, ribbon cables, and then your main circuit board's right here. So inside the case, the only thing I really found interesting was that there's a programming port located on the side of the circuit board right here. And I believe this port would be classified as a mini USB. So I'm using a charging cable from a Wii U Pro controller, and I can plug into that port. But in order to plug into it, you have to remove 4 screws on the circuit board and lift it up so it has clearance to plug in. So I got my circuit board loose now, and the USB cable's plugged in, so let's go ahead and plug the other end into my computer and see what happens. So I'm running Windows 10, and when I plug it into my computer, it recognizes it as a media device called RK3036. From here I can click on the NAND flash, and that gives me access to some sort of Android folder structure. So this seems to be running some sort of Android operating system. But every single one of these folders seems to be empty. The only one that has anything in it is the AT Games folder. And inside that folder is a catch folder, and that seems to be where your saved games go. And as it is right now, there's not a way to add games yet, but I'm sure it's just a matter of time before me or someone else out there figures this out. And I have figured out how you can access more files through an ADB connection, but it's very complicated, and I'll have to get to that in a future video. Here's a look at the controller. It's wireless, and it has 9 buttons. It has a rewind button, a menu button, and a start button. And then located on the top, you have a player 1 or player 2 switch. And to power the controller, it takes 2 AAA batteries. And here's a look at the poster it came with. And I think this would have been way cooler if it would have been an original Genesis poster with original artwork, but this is alright. And then on the back of the poster, you have instructions for the console. How do I start playing? Well, you just plug the console in and you turn it on. Pretty easy. Okay, I got my console put back together, so I'm going to go ahead and power it up, and I'll show you the software on it. So we're here at the main menu, and we got some homebrew games, and to be honest, those are not very good. We got some Sonic games, we got some Mortal Kombat games, we got some Sega games, which would be the bulk of all your games mixed together. We got some recently played games, and your favorites. So the menu layout's okay, it's nothing to brag about. Really, my only complaint with it, though, is that navigating is weird. You have to use your B and C buttons on the left if you want to navigate to your different game sections. But then when you select a game section, you can use your D-pad to select a game just by moving back and forth or up and down. There is some pretty decent titles on here. There's a mixture of Master System games, Game Gear games, Genesis games, and the homebrew games. But those homebrew games, I don't think they should even count because they're not very good. And there's 19 of those games, so really the box should say 66 games built in, and then have those homebrew games as just true bonus games. Alright, let's go ahead and try Sonic the Hedgehog 2 out. And hearing that chime never gets old. That is if you're a true Sega fan. So with this console, don't expect perfect emulation. There is some issues for sure, but some of the games play pretty well, like Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So my favorite part about this console, hands down, would be the rewind feature. So using that rewind button is cheating, but who cares? So I've just lost my rings. I'm going to push the rewind button. That's going to take me back 7 seconds, and I can try it again. Now I'm going to push my menu button, and that'll give me access to saving the game, loading the game, quitting the game, or turn on the scanline filter. And what that filter does is it gives it the looks of a retro TV, and I'm not really into that. So now I'm going to go ahead and save the game by selecting A. Then I'm going to push my menu button and quit the game. Now I'm going to reload the game, and it gives me the option to start a new game or load that saved game. So it takes me right back to where I left off. So that's a very cool feature too. But here's a game where the emulation is not very good. This is Mortal Kombat 3, and all I'm trying to do here is a simple jump and kick move, and I can't get that combination to work. For some reason the emulation seems to be a little bit faster than normal, and when I try to jump in the air and kick, it's not working out. At first I thought it was lagging issues with the controller, but when I play Mortal Kombat 2, I can do the move just fine. So it took me about 20 tries just to land one kick, so there seems to be emulation issues with the speed of the game. So this game, in my opinion, shouldn't have even been included if you can't play it properly. So I tried to test a lot of different games out, and most of them did play pretty good. But every once in a while I'd have issues, and a lot of the issues just seem to be random. So right here I'm playing Phantasy Star, and for some reason my controller just stopped responding, and there was nothing I could do. I tried pushing reset, I tried pushing the menu button to save the game, nothing would work. So the only thing I could do is turn the power off and back on. So right here I'm playing Altered Beast, and I had some issues with this game too. So I'm starting a game, and if you look closely, all of a sudden my rewind feature turns on, and I didn't push a thing. I did it all on its own. Some more issues I'm having is every once in a while I'll be playing a game, and the console will just reset. And this doesn't happen all the time though, it's very sporadic. It happens maybe 1% of the time, but when it happens, if you're playing a game, you lose all that progress, unless you just happen to save the game before it turned off on its own. So because of this, I found myself saving the game any chance I could. So to play a cartridge game, you have to turn the console off, insert your cartridge, then power it back on. Then it's going to read your cartridge and load it into the software. So what it does is it converts the cartridge game to a virtual game, that way you have the save features and the rewind features. But as soon as you turn your console off and remove the cartridge, you lose access to the game, but your save game does stay in place, so all you have to do is power your console back on with the cartridge inserted, and you can access right where you left off. So for me, being able to save and rewind the cartridge games is a huge plus. Imagine if they would have had that feature with the Sega channel. You remember that? There's got to be a few people that remember the Sega channel. Alright, let's go ahead and try a Game Gear game out, and there's an overlay on the screen that kind of resembles the original Game Gear. But I'm not a huge fan of this. The screen's really small. They should have made it just a little bit bigger. They should have resized it somehow. And here's a Master System game. There's no overlays for these games, but the screen's still a little bit smaller than the Genesis games. So here's my final thoughts on the console. If you're a hardcore gamer and you plan on playing this console a lot, and you want to just pick up a controller and it works and there's no issues, then this console is probably not for you. But if you're more of a collector and you plan on just having this on your shelf to look at and play once in a while, this console might be right for you. The only issue I'd say is that $70 is too much. This console should be priced maybe around $40 to $45, and that'd make it more worth it. Myself, I'm just more of a collector, so that's exactly what's going to happen. It's just going to sit on my shelf, and I might play it once a year. So if I was to rate this console 1 out of 10, with 10 being the best, I'd probably give this console a 5. I mean, this console does have some cool features. The rewind and save features for the games that are built in, plus the cartridges. That's awesome. But issues with these games glitching, lagging, and resetting is just a huge problem that can't be overlooked. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. If you want to hear more from me, please subscribe and click that like button.
Hey everyone, this is 8-Bit Flashback, and a couple weeks ago I picked up one of these Sega Genesis Flashback Consoles. Hey everyone, this is 8-Bit Flashback, and a couple weeks ago I picked up one of these Sega Genesis Flashback Hey everyone, this is 8-Bit Flashback, and a couple weeks ago I picked up one of these Sega Genesis Why can't I say Genesis? Alright. Hey everyone, this is 8-Bit Flashback, and a couple weeks ago I picked up one of these Sega Genesis Hey everyone, this is 8-Bit Flashback, and a couple weeks ago I picked up one of these Sega Genesis God, I can't say Genesis. Sega Genesis. Hey everyone, this is 8-Bit Flashback, and a couple weeks ago I picked up one of these Sega Genesis Flashback Consoles, And I was going to do a review on it right away, but I decided to wait, so I gave it a lot of playing time and testing time.